Machlokas Abaye and Rava. I'm going to review it one more time. So Abaye says, according to the Ran's way of learning, which is, I think, the right way to learn, the Ran's saying that it's an issue of Daito Lachzor versus Al Yishana Adam. So both of them agree that Al Yishana Adam is the dominant principle. If you have a tension between Daito Lachzor and Al Yishana Adam is going to win out. So then what's Machlokas Abaye and Rava? So Abaye says that Al Yishana Adam only applies to the Reisha, which means that in a case where I should act like a Miami guy, right? Al Yishana Adam prevents me acting like a Miami guy and rather act like a New Yorker because can't go against the Minhag. According to Rava says, again, in the Lashon of both the Ran and the Gemara, or I should say the Gemara and the Ran, that really Al Yishana Adam applies to both. Right? It's just that by the second case, there's no chashash of Al Yishana Adam because he's Yoshev Batal. Okay, and he throws in this thing that it's not deraisa. Right? So, but the key thing is that he says Al Yishana Adam applies to both. It's just that in the second case, there's no chashash. There's no chashash. Well, I don't want to say that. He says there's no chashash. So what's the machlokas? He's saying like this. He's saying, so another step we could take. So first we have the possibility, we're getting to the mechanics, which is one step. The step after that is what you're saying, which is that Abaye is going to say that it's not that there's, in the case of Yoshev Batal, it's not that there's no machlokas, right? Because technically speaking, if I'm sitting Yoshev Batal and everyone else is doing malacha, you can't say from my perspective, is there a difference? Of course there is, right? But what's lacking?
Yishna Adam nickerness.
Okay, so you're saying nickerness. So we're going to qualify a little bit more, but nickerness is lacking. We got to get a better term than that, but nickerness. Okay, good. Now ping to the other side.
So the other side says.
So, Abaye, so the question's like this. Let's take Abaye first, all right? Because I think what you're saying is good by Abaye. It's going to take it one little step further. So Abaye is going to say, again, we have the two principles here. We have Daito Lachzor and Al Yishana Adam, right? Two competing principles, right? And it's very funny the way that you have to appreciate the way the Ran presents it. And that's why I always say you got to be sensitive to how the Rishonim write. The Ran is insane. What does the Ran say? He says, really Medina, right? The halacha is, what do you always go by? Daito Lachzor, right? The way the Ran writes is that conceptually speaking, what's really should be the dominant principle? Daito Lachzor, except when. Al Yishana Adam, right?
Can we clarify that? It's really not.
So what I'm saying, but that's exactly the point, though. You see, it's a funny idea. It's not that. So I was tricking you guys. It's not that you have A and B, and then it's like when they're together, B beats out A.
Independent B.
You always have A according to Abaye. A is always there. Now, 1 second. Now, Abaye says it's really Daito Lachzor is really the essential principle. But hold on. Really, according to Abaye, Daito Lachzor is really your dominant principle. That is the principle. But now you have another situation that emerges, right? You have another chashash that can enter into the scene, which is Al Yishana Adam. Okay, and there's really all along is Daito Lachzor. That's the guiding principle. But every so often you're going to enter a situation where it's Al Yishana Adam. You have another concern to weigh. You understand? But now he's going to say, so just with that one step. Now, what's the next step he's going to say? He's going to say like this: in order for it to be like you guys were saying before, which is very nice. You're saying that it's of course it's machlokas, right? I'm Daito Lachzor guy, so I'm my lack of my not doing malacha is different than the minhag makom. You can't dispute that, right? But what's it lacking? Why can't it be Al Yishana Adam? When you say nicker, what is nicker? But why?
It lacks the philosophy of focus. It lacks the.
No. Just be more halakhic. Give me. You have to halakhify that.
It lacks my.
It has to be a ma'isa. I have to do something. Yoshev Batal doesn't register as an undermining or challenge against authority. It's just Yoshev Batal. There's no ma'isa.
The reason why you have
Abaye is saying that really Daito Lachzor is the guiding principle here.
It's always there.
It's always there. Now the question is, in certain situations, there's another competing concern you have to evaluate, which is Al Yishana Adam. Okay, he's not saying it doesn't win. You're right, Al Yishana Adam wins out, but it's not that there's in every situation you have Daito Lachzor and I. No, A is always there. It's always there because I'm a Miami guy, right? It's only a question in certain situations where now B may emerge. But he's going to say it's only B when what? When I can do exactly. It has to be a mice I can do to demonstrate I'm challenging their minhag.
Sitting there doing nothing.
That's not a ma'isa. Yeah. That's not a ma'isa. So that's what he means. Al Yishana doesn't apply there. There's no ma'isa. It's still machlokas, but there's no ma'isa. So what does Rava say? And this is where the beauty of this machlokas comes in. Forget the practical mafkin for a second. Conceptually, you can see what they're arguing on. Rava says, no, that's not how they constructed this. What's the construct? I think you guys are getting in this direction. What's the construct of Daito Laxor and Ali Shana Adam? Abai is saying it's Daito Laxor, and then every so often it's a competing concern that enters into the picture.
No.
But that's not what...
A and B are always there.
A and B are always there. A and B are always there, meaning, I would say even more than that. It's not just they're always there. Every time, okay, when I'm doing Daito Laxor, right, I'm noheg like my makom. I'm a Miami guy, so I'm noheg that way, right? But in the very nihug itself always exists what? Some potential challenge to the makom I'm in. Right, in other words, I'm defined as someone. Abai is saying I'm A, and then certain situations come along where I got to face B. According to Ravi, he's saying no. All along, it's not that Daito Laxor is your dominant principle. All along, right, I have these two things that coexist. I am a Miami guy, but I'm going to New York. Right? Every single situation that exists, I got to say to myself, I'm both. I am someone who's a Miami guy, but my niyog always presents the potential for what? For machlokas.
How are those equal though?
Because that every situation I go into, I got to look at these two phenomena.
How is the second one inherent?
He's saying when the Mishnah introduces it, remember, what does Rabbah say? Rabbah says, Ali Shana Adam applies to both. So he's saying, what's that? What does it mean, both? He's saying, again, let's factually, Daito Laxor is both, and Aisha and Adam's both. Well, what do you mean both? What does that mean? So he's saying no. He's saying when he says both, what I think he means to say is that built into your definition as a person of nihug. Okay, there's two phenomena that always coexist. There's where I'm from, that's Daito Laxor, and at the same time it's competing with where I'm going to. Right? Those things are always meshed together. Always.
How's the second one inherent?
Oh, the answer's simple. That's part of the definition of minhag. Part of the very definition of minhag is there's where I'm from. That's one idea, right? And there's also how the community relates to what I'm doing. Am I challenging their minhag? That is part of the definition of minhag. Part of the definition of minhag is how I am relating to the makam and how they perceive me. So now every city I go to, I am a Miamian who must deal with the New Yorkers. Every time. So now what's he going to say? So what does he mean? So that's what it means that Aisha Adam applies to both. So now in the second case it's very nice. Because what's lacking in the second case? Alright? And it has to, now that's not a Maisa. This is where the Nikra idea comes in. He's saying that in other words, every situation is always the potential of Aisha Adam. Right? But if it has to be, the way I put it was, in just nice English, unambiguously conspicuous, all right? That what I'm doing is a challenge to the minhag makam. That's Rava. That's Rava. Because Rava would hold, Rava says, you understand? Abaye would say that I need an actual Maisa. There has to be a Maisa for the Machlokas to now become Ali Shana Adam. But Rava's not saying that. Rava's saying Ali Shana Adam is in every situation. It's just a question that always exists in potentia. What actualizes it? When it's not unambiguously conspicuous. Meaning I'm doing, that's the idea Nicker. Where in some way it could be looked upon as saying I'm challenging the minhag.
I thought it was always...
I'm saying that he's always evaluating that problem. In his very definition as a person of minhag, he's always walking around being a Miamian who now has to deal with the fact that he's in New York.
It's only at burger store.
Now you see, now you see the point of this machlokas. Okay, even though practically, as far as I'm concerned, there's really no nafkamidam, but conceptually, the two different worlds. Because according to Baye, it's always Daito Laxor. Aisha and Adam is just another consideration. Whereas according to Rava, built into the definition of the guy, he's always evaluating this. I am I'm Neo Miami against the potential of how this could be interpreted in the community I go to. Now we're moving on to the Baal Maor. It's in the Dape Ibsachim, Dape Arif, Tes Zayin Amabez, Divrei Maskil, Makom Shenago. And go. This is not relevant at all to minhag, but the Baal Maor lets you know that the implication from the Mishnah is that from Chatzos on, it's Asr Malach and Erev Pesach. That's Halacha L'maisa. You're not supposed to, in fact, really it's really din in Yantav also. What? They're banan. But you shouldn't do
any malacha?
You're really not supposed to, well, it's a whole big sugya in and of itself, but really you're supposed to refrain.
Even
Okay.
Krav. All right. So what should don't be involved in your work. Rather focus on bringing the korban. The kach asru. No, umikan anu l'medium. Hazeh.
בזמן הזה שאין קרבן דינו כשאר הרבה לעשוס כשאר הרבה ימים טובים במקום שנהגו לעשוס הסן לפי ימינו.
Fine. Okay. Now comes the meat, the beginning of the meat. Well, the fum sugi the shmaita.
לפי שמעתה במנהגו שיש על כל אדם לעשות.
Okay, so he's saying, so now he's the general principle that apply. That's what he means. The general principle of minhagim is what? Is that now he's going to come with his. This is his like his speech. Okay, yesh al kol adam lasos.
חומרי מקום שיצא משם ואין הפורש בדבר זה בכל מקום בכל מי שדאית לחזור.
Limkamo.
כי זה קבלת אבוס הוא ויש בו משום שמה
Bini.
בני.
Musar vicha. All right. So what's the first thing he's saying? What's the guiding principle for minhagim? What is the guiding principle? Daito laksor. Okay. So the first thing he wants to tell you is what determines your allegiance and your adherence to minhag. Daito laksor. Right. You always go. You're always a Miamian. In fact, the predominant case is always going to be you're returning back to your home. Now he's very clever. He ties it in, if you guys remember, to the first case. What was the first case that remember the Bnei Baishan?
Is that mafish?
No, the case before.
Not going to
The shuk on our Shabbos, right? So he says that is an example of that. I'm not sure why he learns that way, but he's saying that's the first example of daito laksor. He's saying when they go to the shuk, they're in test. Okay, so keep going.
כמייסה דבני ביישן, וזהו שחוסרח תנא דמסניסן לפי פירושו של אביי, לעשה סתם לדבריו, לחומר המקום, שהלך משם בפני המחלוקס, ולא הוצח לעשה סתם לחומר המקום, שיוצא משם.
Why?
לפי שתם חומר המקום שיוצא משם, ידוע הוא נכסב, שנאמר, שמע בני מוסר אביך, והוא חומר גדול.
So stop. So he's saying like this. So what's he saying? He's saying that he's saying Shema b'ni Musar Avicha. It's from Mishlei. So he's saying, yeah. So what he's saying. So he's saying Shema b'ni Musar Avicha is he's learning it much stronger than you would if you just had the little reading of the Gemara. But he's saying that teaches you that when you're mekabel a minhag, right, you are always bound by that minhag. That's it. That's part of who you are. In other words, part of the definition of the Gavra is if in my town they do minhag X, everywhere I go, I'm always defined by that minhag. I'm always bound by that minhag.
Part of your shulchan.
So what's Daito laksor?
Oh, so Daito laksor means as long as my intention is to return, right? So I'm always a Miamian. I'm always defined as a Miamian. That's just part of who I am. So the Baal is saying very simple. He's saying that really, Daito laksor, in other words, if you're going in conceptual order or conceptual chronological order, okay? So Daito laksor really is our overarching principle until Rav Ashi comes along and introduces what? Ain't Daito laksor. So therefore, if my intention is not to return, if all you had was Daito laksor, you would say what Dylan was saying before, which is what? I can never break it. He says no. So Rav Ashi comes along, both, if you guys remember, both in Chulin and here, Rav Ashi comes along and says, remember he makes the qualification in Rabba's case. He says, no, it's a question about these daito laksor, ain't daito laksor. So he's saying Rav Ashi was the first person to introduce the idea that if it's ain't daito laksor, you become what?
Somewhere else.
You become a New Yorker. In other words, the ain't daito laksor, you might have thought that if I leave Miami and move to New York, right, I'm still a Miamian.
It doesn't sound different.
Right? Kamash London know that I'm actually a New Yorker. Well, but he's emphasizing one point. It's not crazy to assume that once a Miamian, always Miamian, because you would think. Look, you gotta be sensitive to the case he's building. Think about the Havamina. Once I'm mekabel a minhag, right? You would think that the Kabbalah binds me forever to that minhag.
And that's just
because it was a Kabbalah. I was mekabel as my minhag, right? Kamash want to know that even though there was a Kabbalah,
Kabbalah is only based on your location. That's what.
Correct. So once I break the relationship to the location, so now I become a New Yorker. And as if there was ever a Kabbalah.
I suppose if you had accepted it forever, then you would.
Well, that's what you would have thought. You would have thought Daito laksor.
Said if you intentionally had, then you never would be able to break it.
So what do we have at this point? So all we know from the Baal is that if I move to New York, if I'm Daito laksor, if I'm a Miamian and I'm planning to return to Miami, so I'm bound by my Miami minhagim. Notice, by the way, has he mentioned anything about Ali Shana Adam? No. And if I'm going to move to New York, what am I defined by? I'm a New Yorker. Okay, so far, no big deal.
You had a little shtick about that before.
So now, insofar as Chomri Makam, the place I go to, so I'm a Miami guy and I'm going to New York. Okay. All right.
Is this Holach Jachan the same as we said before?
What do you mean?
And is this Ein Natiran B'Pneim, B'Pneim Machlokas?
Okay, so keep going. But who know Heter La'atzmo?
B'Yachad.
Ein Daito laksor. Oh, so what's the case? The case is there's no Makam. Daito laksor. So I'm Miami and I go to New York. Okay. Now the question is, can I go ahead and matir the minhag? What do you call it? Can I be noag against them? Okay, can I be noag against them?
Wait, so you moved there?
No, I didn't move there.
Okay, you're staying there.
I'm staying there. I have a round trip ticket.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so he's saying this. He's saying that you have to take into account what if they're kusai or bnei medina. Remember the kusai?
Yeah.
And what's bnei medina?
Amaratz.
Amaratzim. So if they're hamon am, right? So he says what if they're hamon am? So then I can't go against them openly. Okay, but who know hetalatzno b'yachid im daitalaxor. But in the privacy of my own home, I can do whatever I want.
Is that different?
Not so far, not so much. But the point he's saying is that if I'm in Miami and I go to New York, okay, so really the overarching principle is what? But I still have to take into account the issue of being matir in front of them, and that what will that lead to? Zilzal, etc., etc. But obviously, it's only concerned when it's public.
Okay.
So when if I can be noeg, I should be noeg like a Miami guy in the privacy of my own home. Okay.
This is unlike
We said
anything
before.
we've
Well, so if I'm moving to New York, so obviously what do?
You hold New York.
Okay, let's keep going.
ואם הם תלמידי חכמים, או מקום שמצוין תלמידי חכמים ביניהם, נוהג היתר לעצמו. אפילו בפניהם, אם דת
Whoa, okay, so now what's he adding here? Now another important point. He's saying if I go to the city and I'm daito lachzor, but it's a place for the Talmidei Chachamim, right? You go to, what do you call it?
How available is, let's
Stay in Modi'in, and there's Talmidei Chachamim in Modi'in, right? So the presence of Talmidei Chachamim means what? I have the right to go ahead and
be matzmin.
what to be noheg like my minhag from Miami.
Right.
Does that
Right?
only mean?
Or does it mean that the Baal is being very careful? He's saying when I go to a city that's filled with just Amaratzim, so then I got to be sensitive to that. But as long as there's some Talmidei Chachamim present,
So they'll
right?
know that you're doing it because
Quantify
that's
that or
officer.
That's a good call. Not yet.
Because then they'll know that you're
What?
doing it.
What Ezra's saying is good, right? Because what do they do?
The when they see this guy who's being mazazel, the thing, they'll be like, what the heck is this guy doing? They'll ask the Talmud Chacham.
Right. So now, I'm not. This is not a tangent, okay? But now with what Ezra just said, we can answer a question we had before, okay? The question we had before was, why is it by Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, right? We're not worried about. I'm sorry, Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. We're not worried about
Because the
Talmidei Chacham.
what?
They're in Bavel, it's Minhag.
Right. So no. But better than that though. No,
they're
we're
not
not.
Chachamim injured.
No, you're saying that what are people going to do? They're going to ask the Talmidei Chachamim, right? So what does that show us about the Hamon?
The word.
As bad as we may think they
Oh, so
are.
they're good.
They are
Those
still
good ones.
attached to
Those are not
Talmidei
the food.
So the thing is, the Hamon will never see it. If the Hamon knows that the Eretz Yisrael Talmidei Chachamim are a higher level than the ones in Bavel, right? They will never see Eretz Yisrael, that the fact that you're noig like Eretz Yisrael against the Minhag Bavel as a challenge to the institution. Because they'll recognize that the Eretz Yisrael obey him on a higher level. So the Rambam is tipping, in a sense, he's giving us a little bit of a little crumb here. I'm using what he's saying to apply to that case. But what he's saying here is that as long as the Talmidei Chachamim in the community, so then Zilzal is no longer an issue. Because like as you're saying, they'll come and consult the Talmidei Chacham. Hey, what's that guy doing? He's going against the Minhag HaMakam. Oh, he's allowed to do that, blah, 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 blah. Right? Okay. Now, next point. V'chol zeh
בדברים שיודע בהן שהוא מותר.
minhag bo'isr. Meaning what kind of minhag?
Preventative.
No, what kind of minhag?
Not talos.
Not talos, right. All this applies in a situation where it's not a minhag talos. Okay? V'imu davar
When go talos, I'm matir nosel b'fneim.
b'chol inyan. So if you go to a city, and this is important, if you go to a city and they did a minhag talos, I can openly go against the minhag. Openly. So if let's say we go to, give me an example of minhag talos.
Modi'in
So in Modi'in is a minhag, but that won't be in Modi'in. In Modi'in is a minhag that's also to use pink. It's also to use pink toilet paper in Modi'in. Okay, we'll use that for now. It's also.
Why is that
That's a minhag. So it's straight. Notice what's the difference? The difference is if they know it's mutter, but they treat it like it's usher, that's not minhag talos. Minhag talos is where they actually think it's usher. That's minhag talos. So they think
Wait,
that.
so they think it's much.
And you don't have to worry about such a minhag. Such a minhag, it doesn't exist in your framework.
לפי ראשוני שכסף וריף זצר, והלכס דבר שאינו יודע בו שהוא מותר,
The tabo be'isr.
נשאל ומתיר.
We'll do that Yerushalmi tomorrow, but the Yerushalmi basically says if it's a minhag that's betos, right? And so as long as I ask the Talmid Chacham, right? I say to him, listen, what's going on here? He can matir for me. We'll get to that later on what that is. Okay?
B'chol chutz tchum.
Now, okay, that's point 2. Third point. The chol chutz l'tchum, meaning every time, as long as I'm outside the borders of the city.
Ein yosen lav chomer makom shalach l'sham.
But so according to like Brooks isn't even.
I don't want you to read the rest of it because that's a little more complex. We'll take that a little more tomorrow. But he basically says that what is the extent of how far does this extend to? How far does the minhag extend to? Obviously,
Until it stops.
but I'm saying a regular minhag, you're only bound by the borders of the city, right? Because you're not saying you don't worry about chomer makom if I'm outside the boundaries of the city. Okay.
Real talk.
Let's review the case. There's going to be a big problem. There's a number of questions Ramban's going to bring up, but one of them I want to focus on right now. I just want to mention now just to give you a little tease. So Ramban says like this. Let's take the case of Yehuda and Hillel. There were 3 cases. Okay, Yehuda and Hillel go to city A, B, and C. That's it. Let's say. Right. No, don't worry about that.
Either way, you have a problem.
Yehuda and Hillel go to Kabul. Okay, and they're brothers, and they said we're going to go to the bathhouse together. Now, the key thing to keep in mind is that they know there's a minhag in the again, this is the key thing.
Scheming to mess up
Right.
the town.
They know there's a minhag there, but they figure they're doing it b'tzina or something like that, but they know there's a minhag there.
How do we know that they weren't?
Well, because Rabban's going to make that as an assumption. So so now they're going to have a problem. So if they're coming along and openly going against the minhag, which clearly seems to be the case, because what happens? The people in the city come over and say, "What are you doing? You're going against our minhag, right?" So if it was a real minhag, how do they have any right to go against the minhag? But if it was a minhag talos, what should they have said afterwards?
Morons.
Your minhag, right? We're gonna continue beating together. And yet Yehuda and Hillel, what do? Yehuda left, and Yehuda went and took out the back door, right? So you have a big problem. According to the Baal, the Ramban's going to say, according to the Baal, what kind of minhag was that? How are you going to get out of this problem?
Right. Was that a wrestler back in the
Just to get the couple questions of Ramban down, you can kind of see where the Ramban's going. So he says, the Ramban says, "Od kasav." You got to skip ahead to the next paragraph. Od kasav de bedine minhagos.
Od kasav bedine minhagos and laws of minhag.
Aval.
B'chomer makom shalach l'sham b'zeh yish drachim harbe. There are many different ways. Shem heim kusai open a medina. Ein la tir mifneim. What is kusai?
That Kusai is basically like these Jews these Goyim who converted, but their conversions are always very suspicious, so we treat them like Amoratzim.
Or b'nei medina.
That's the same thing. They're synonymous. Okay.
Ein la tir mifneim. You shouldn't do it in front of them. Mifnei because you're going to cause strife.
V'chulei. V'im hein talmei chachamim v'chulei.
Ein talmei chacham v'chulei. Ad noeg het latzmo. Ad noeg het latzmo.
Okay. V'chol keep going. He's just quoting the Baal more.
What do you mean? Ad noeg het latzmo until you.
No, he's saying until those words.
Nag no het.
Right. And then he says afilu b'them v'chulei. Fine. V'chol zed you should do it. Fine. Blah blah blah. And all that is the riff. Okay. Fine. Now v'hutzrachti lahasik al dvarav. Okay.
V'hutzrachti lahasik al dvarav. I need to answer him. Mimnei shetalim b'divrei beinu hagadol ma shekasav tchila ein latir b'fneihem mnei achlogas. You can't permit it in front of them because of achlogas. Im lomar lahem mutar matam lam liv b'nei achlogas. If they're going to say to them, you can do it, so why would that be called achlogas? V'lo heinatun asur. They made it themselves.
Meaning they can't do it to begin with.
Right.
In other words, you're bound by the minhag, so you can't even get into the issue of matir b'fneihem if it's usher for you to go against it. Okay. Even if you want to ask Talmud Chacham why, right?
Meaning if it was his.
He's saying like this. He's saying you can't even get off the ground with this whole business. That's what I'm telling you. This is like everything we've done before. Because the Ramban's saying, one second, let's understand what's going on here, okay? How does this whole thing work? If I'm bound by my minhag, and I go to another makom, right? And that makom I go to, it's a val minhag, right? So now let's assume I have to act like the minhag of makom. I have no right to, because I have no right to matir b'fneim. I can't cause machlokas. Right? So he's saying, what's the real underlying principle? Ein matir b'fneim. I can't openly go against machlokas. What? Well, they're basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, he's treating them the same thing. But that's the case. He's saying, who cares if there's Talmud Chacham around or not? Okay. At the end of the day, right? He says this. He says, "Masha chasad tchila ein lahatir mifneim imnei machlokas im lomar lahem mutarin atem." Right? If I'm allowed to tell them that's okay for them to do, lama machlokas. What am I worried about machlokas for? Obviously, I'm not. Because if I could tell them that's okay to do, I'm not worried about machlokas. But the whole thing is silly. But they themselves, it's usher for them to go against the minhag makom. You're bound by that rule. In other words, he's saying the Baal You got, this is the sensitive part. The Maor is dug a hole for himself. What did the Maor say? He said, Daita Laksor is a defining principle. But what makes you bound to a minhag? What makes you bound to a minhag? Kabbalah Savos, right? That's what makes you bound to a minhag, right? So if that's the case, if we're treating minhag with such weight, if I go to another city, right, I can't act against that minhag. I can't act against their Kabbalah. What right to have to do such a thing? I can't.
I thought you said you could.
He's saying you can't. Well, hold on.
That's not a question.
Filu linhag had to latzmo. But where'd you go to? Hold on.
The next words.
Oh, you skipped a line. Vafilu linhag had to latzmo. Katam v'chalam.
No, get the last with Amacham Nami the Hainu Masnita. Lo Kima the Gemara Bukusei al Brisa Mais Darm Barchama Nami the Achol Kasig Humfadisa. Vidatu Lachsahayim, but actually Rav Chizda. Leislu Chomer Makam Shal Sham. Don't you have to keep the Chomer Makam that you went there? Well, Pumdisa Shchich Rabbanik by there's many Chacham in Pumdisa.
Exactly.
Shchich Nami Sivasa, there's also Yeshiva. But Filu Nasan Lav Chomer Shabbat, he still has to keep the Chomer Makam.
So you have an open brisa that tells us what?
That even though he's not there's only a Chacham there, and there's a Yeshiva there, he still has to keep the Chomer Makam.
All right. So now does he have a conceptual question? He says factual. What? Saying we can read into it. I'm saying just to deal with the facts. Factually speaking, what's Ramban saying? I have a proof. There's an open Gemara that says that they say to this guy, it was Rami, whatever. You can't do that. You're going against the Minhag Makam. But 1 second, he was in a Makam where there was plenty of Gedolim in the yeshiva, and yet still what? He can't go against the Minhag.
And we're talking
Which
about
place was this?
In Pupadisa.
What was
So okay. 1 second.